very nervous. I was very nervous during the first interview because I don't do interviews. I don't even give interviews. This is my last interview, so, and Julian is a fantastic interviewer. He was a professional interviewer, and I heard an interview of his. He was witty and adorable, and the guest opened up, and the guest was witty and adorable, and the audience really enjoyed it. And it's not going to be that way now, because I have no idea how to do this.
You're fine.
Wait.
Come closer, come closer.
Close enough.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask Julian. I'm so blank. I'm really nervous. And it's my second interview.
Well, you were nervous on the first.
Oh, and I'm no better now. That's the interesting thing.
No, you really didn't help at all.
I'm very blank, but is there, let me ask you a question I did ask in the first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you were me, asking you questions, what would you ask you?
I would ask, did you do anything in the book that wasn't professional about the professional business? Anything personal about yourself?
Well, it'll sound funny if I just repeat
Yes,
that.
I think it will. So this is what it was. I went through a midlife crisis, as most men do, and I was going out with younger ladies. And I was living in Manhattan, and I took a young lady up to my apartment building, and we got out of the cab, and I said, "This is a pre-war building." And she said, "Vietnam?" So I kind of got the feeling. And then with another lady in a beach house that I had 2x3, it was a little beach house. We were on the deck listening to someone singing, and I said, "Do you know who that is singing?" And she said, "Yeah, that's Natalie Cole's father." So I kind of got the point that maybe I should be dating someone more my age. I knew you'd like that question.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Is that the end?
That's the end. Yeah. You're on. Okay.
Let me ask you a few. Oh, this is the menu. Oh, wait a minute. I know that wait, so that's what you would ask you if you were asking you questions?
So how did I meet you? That's
How
the
did
question.
I meet you?
That's right. How did I meet you?
How did we meet?
How did we meet? Woman is so quick. I was working at Paramount Pictures, and I got a call, and the secretary said, "Elaine May's on the phone." I said, "Wow, Elaine May on the phone?" Yeah. I said, "Hello," and she said, "Warren Beatty told me you're okay for a studio executive," meaning the bar wasn't very high for studio executives. And that's how we met, and Elaine and I talked about her new movie at that time, Mikey and Nicky, which was a film that Barry Diller, who was the head of the studio, asked me to go see. And I went to see it, and I came back and told him it's a terrific movie. And he said, "It is?" He was kind of surprised, because he had taken over from another president. And from that time on, Elaine and I kind of worked on Mikey and Nicky and tried
So
to
what
get...
is your book about? I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
What is my book about?
Yeah.
I'm about 330 pages.
No. Tell it. Did anybody here read Julian's book? Then you'll all be buying. Oh, you did. So one book less, but the rest of you will be buying it. But tell these people what your book is about.
Well, what the book is about is a continuation of the first book, which was called Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life. And the second book is, as you can see, my first book. Oh, it's very kind. Thank you, Mom. The second book is my first book, part 2, because it just continues the same kind of stories that I kind of developed and met people. I want to let you know a couple of stories that are in the book, because Elaine is desperate for me to tell that. So here's a couple of stories. I was friendly with Eli Wallach. We had produced a couple of shows with him, and I had him narrate a film that I did. I had represented Elia Kazan, did a film on Kazan, and So I got to know Eli well. And he told me this story when he was doing The Misfits. He was working with John Huston and, of course, the great Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe, all these people. And he was in a scene where he had to be a drunk scene, had to be drunk. And so he came in and slurred his words and whatever. And Huston said, cut. And he said, Eli, come here. And Eli came over and he said, you know, yesterday on the set when we were working, and Eli said, yeah. He said, I was drunk. And Eli got it. He got it. That he didn't have any idea that Huston had been drunk, so he realized how he had to play the drunk scene. I liked working with him because he was one of the few actors that loved acting. He just loved to be an actor. As opposed to when I worked with George C. Scott, who did not love being an actor. And this is name-dropping time. Are you staying awake, hon?
Yeah. No, but I just want to say this is a fantastic menu. Big one.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I asked George C. Scott once, I said, what's your favorite movie? And I was sure he was going to say Patton. And without a beat, he said Dr. Strangelove. It was kind of interesting. You get things like that happening. Years and years ago, I had a company called Castle Hill Productions. And Castle Hill Productions, I called it Castle Hill not because I was from the Bronx, even though I am from the Bronx, and there is a Castle Hill Avenue, but in German, Schloss is a castle and Berg is either a hill or a mountain. I just left Paramount, they had the mountain, so I went to the hill. And I bought a negative. When you buy a negative of a movie, you own it outright in perpetuity all over the world. And I bought A Night in Casablanca, the Marx Brothers' last movie that the three of them made together. And when I bought the film, not only did I get the negative, but I got all the papers. And I found this incredible story. When they announced that they were going to do A Night in Casablanca, the Warner Brothers attorneys called and said, you can't use the name Casablanca, we own the name Casablanca, because we made the movie Casablanca. Letters are going back and forth, and finally Groucho says, give me a pen, give me a pencil, let me write something. And he writes to Jack Warner, he said, Jack, if you continue with this nonsensical suit, I'm going to sue you because we were the Marx Brothers before you were the Warner Brothers. Anyhow, that was a something. Oh, you going to say something now?
Just a word or two, and then you can go on.
Thank you.
I want to say that this is only a few of whatever he just said that is in his book. Better stories, hilarious stories, so you're all going to buy one. I hope I'm not doing this for nothing.
Actually, you are doing it for nothing.
But so tell me, what is it? Does anybody want to know anything else about the book? Who has a good question? Get up here if you do.
I have one, Elaine.
You do. Somebody has raised their hand. Yes?
I would love to know, since you mentioned Paramount already twice, what was it like to be an executive in a movie studio, given all the terrible things we hear about what goes on?
Well, I would say that the 2-year contract that I had at Paramount were the 2 worst years of my life. By far, in fact. But if you're a religious person, and they say that when God closes a door, he opens a window, I was able to meet Elaine May, Herb Gardner, Marlo Thomas, Charles Grodin, and all of these people became lifelong friends, and that was almost 50 years ago. The problem I had was the fact that vice president in charge of production, I couldn't say yes. I could not okay a movie. I could say no, and I could say I'll get back to you, but I could not do it. So I had left Walter Reed Theaters, and I had bought the movies for all the first-run theaters throughout the United States, and I had no one to report to. I made the final decision, for good or for bad. So the idea that I couldn't make any decision except I'll get back to you was very tough. So that was my 2 years at Paramount. I quit after 1 year, but Barry Dillon wouldn't let me leave. And I may have been one of the few people in North America at that time that liked Barry, but I did. I really did. I thought he was very smart and very interesting. And he said to me one day, why do you want to leave? And I said, because I'm diametrically opposed to everything you do here. And he said, diametrically? So that was my time. What do you think, Elaine?
Why do I need two mics? I have this mic. Sorry, it's just a question about me, but
Oh no, that's for the filming. The filming.
Oh,
Yes,
Julian.
but it's the filming for you and me. It's our film. I want this for posterity.
Okay.
And where is posterity?
No, really, this and other fascinating stories will be in Julian's book that you're going to buy, because otherwise I
You
will
don't
have
know
gone
why
down.
Yeah. Well, I
sorry.
said, are you interrupting?
No, go ahead.
As I mentioned, I gotten to know Warren Beatty, and that's how he sent Elaine to me. And he said to me one day, you were a history major, weren't you? And I said, yeah, I was. He said, I'm going to stump you on an easy question, and I'll bet you $1 I can. I said, okay. So he said, who was the only vice president of the United States who wrote a #1 best-selling record and song? I said, come on, you're making it up. He said, no, I'm not. And it turned out that it was a man named Charles Dawes, D-A-W-E-S, and Charles Dawes wrote, It's All in the Game. Many a tear has to fall, but it's all in the game. So I handed him $1, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask you an easy question, see if you can answer it. I said, who was the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? And Warren thought for a moment, took the $1, and gave it back to me. And that was John Jay.
These and many other stories like this are going to be in the book that you buy when you leave. I'm doing this. This is what I'm here for.
This group is not buying.
Well, then to hell with you. then,
Roger!
Then really, then actually
What-
take a
Ro-
peek at this menu.
Roger.
But here's the thing. Julian has not only this talent for stories and writing, he's a great joke teller. Tell a joke, honey. He really is a great joke teller. Watch this.
Oh, okay. A guy's living in the suburbs, and he comes home and says to his wife, I need the car. I have to go into town and pick something up. She says, the car's not working. He says, what do you mean? It was working yesterday. What's the matter with the car? She said, there's water in the carburetor. He says, you wouldn't know a carburetor from a spark plug. Just tell me where the car is. She said, in the lake. What did you think when you first met me?
I actually written about in the first foreword that I wrote for his first book, and I'd like you to buy that book too and read it. I actually did say how I met him, but it's on and on and on. Who is this anyway?
It's Roger.
Oh, Roger.
I started on WMCA in 1974, so I'm celebrating 50 years of doing this. So that's kind of nice. And also shocking, since in my head I just got bar mitzvah. But okay. All right. I love interviewing when I was younger. I really loved it, because there was George Burns, Bob Hope, Jack Nicholson, Betty Davis, John Huston. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it to this day that I sat and it was just the two of us talking. So I love that. I love that. What I like about being interviewed, of course, is that when it's a professional interviewer, they ask questions that kind of stimulate and kind of think about your life, you know. I grew up across the street from the Kingsbridge Armory in the Bronx. Before they built the Javits Center or the Coliseum, the Kingsbridge Armory, which is the largest armory in the world, hosted motorboat shows and car shows and rodeos. And here I am, about 8 years old, and I'm going to a rodeo in the Bronx. It was so hard to comprehend. And there was Buster Crabbe, and there was Johnny McBrown, and these are the guys I've been watching on early television. So it was quite exciting. And what happened was I decided to go to my barber, who told me, I just got 2 tickets for the opening of this new show at the Armory. Do you want them? And I said, yeah. And I said, well, how come you have it? He said, oh, they give us 2 free tickets the first day for all the stores. So in those days, you lived in the neighborhood, and I went to the tailor shop, the delicatessen, the drugstore. You have 2 tickets for opening day, and they did. And so I took all these tickets, and I sold them outside the Armory. It was $3 to get in. I sold them for $2, and I did great. I was really excited, and I came home, and I took all those dollar bills and spread them on my bed. And I used to love Scrooge McDuck, who was the rich uncle of Donald Duck. And he used to dive into the swimming pool of money. So I, being 8, 10 years old, dove into those dollar bills when my mother walked in. What the hell is it? What are you doing? And I told her, and she said, look, you got to promise me you'll never do that again. And I said, I promise. And I never dove into the dollars again.
So, the way I met Julian, it's really, really interesting, and it's all really written about in his first book. It was my first, so buy the first book if you don't have it. Go ahead, honey.
Oh, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
You said that you worked at Paramount for 2 years and didn't get to say yes to any films. Are there any films from that time that you wish you could have said yes to?
Well, I was in charge. This is really, you had as much to do with it as I did, but I was in charge of the shooting of Saturday Night Fever because they were shooting in New York, and I was in New York, and I would go down. The very first day I went to Saturday Night Fever to the set was on a Brooklyn street. There was a kid starring in it from television, as you know, but I had no idea what the crowds were to see John Travolta from Welcome Back, Kotter. I mean, it was amazing. We could not control it. We had to call the police because there was such pandemonium. My entire contribution to Saturday Night Fever was to go to John Badham, the director, and say, look, this is 4-letter language, and there was no cable at that time or any cassettes. I said, you can't use this language. We have to do a tape without that language. And so that was my contribution. I got the television version done because of me. No, I really, what I wanted to do, Bobby Fosse had given me all that jazz. I wanted to do that. They turned that down. There was a movie called Meteor. I wanted to do that. There was a movie that we were, and this was an interesting lesson for me to learn. There was a movie where we could not lose. We could put up a couple of $1 million, but the CBS network was going to buy it. So the answer was that the worst comes to the worst, we would make a little profit. And I learned from the studio system, they don't want a little profit. They want big profit. They don't care about it. And my answer to Barry was always things like, we're going to lose on some movies, you'll agree. I said, so this will help. No, you're thinking too small. And I was thinking too small for a studio almost 50 years ago. Now everything is a tentpole. So pleased when the first book came out and got some wonderful reviews. But I will tell you what I find funny. The consistent good reviews said one thing, everyone, it's great because they're short chapters. I knew that was a compliment of sort.
No, it's really a good book.
Do you have more stories for a third book, or do you think you've covered it all?
Elaine said enough. Elaine.
No, but I think your play, Julian is going to write for him, his next book is a play, right?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
No.
Now, I'm not going to ask you to sing because he has a beautiful voice. You've told a joke. There's no room for you to dance.
I like theater the best. The reason I like theater the best is that, number one, I'm the camera. The camera's not telling me what to look. I can look where I want to look. I can see what I want to see. As a producer, it's all confined. I'm in one area. When I'm making a movie or doing a television show, every day is a new location. Every 2 days you're jumping around, and the craft service didn't come. In theater, it's confined, and you've got basically the set and the costumes and the lighting and the sound, and that's it. And on a movie, there's 82 things. I was going to do my first film that I was going to direct, called Going Hollywood, the 30s. And I was able to get Robert Preston, who had worked in the 30s in movies, to host it. And I went to Elaine, and I said, Elaine, I'm so frightened about this. I mean, I never directed, and Robert Preston, he was just nominated for Victor Victoria that time when I called him. And she said, I said, what do you think I should do? She said, look, let's sit down, and I'll go over every crew member and what they do, what their names are, who they are. And so that's what we did. And she took me through a college class in one day. And I learned who the crew was, and I felt very good. And she said one thing: don't just use one take. Don't let one take work. And so I said, well, why? She said, well, they could make a mistake in the lab. There could be hair on the lens. So many things can happen. So Preston and I got along great, and he did and Elaine had helped write a little bit for me, and he finished, and he did a great take. And he said, okay, Julian, that's it, we're done. I said, Bob, just one more. He said, why? That's a really good take. And I heard there could be hair on the lens, there could be, and he said, okay, and I'll do it again. So once again, Elaine, not even there, saved me.
Well, thank you. Now, I just want to say this. I'm not just complimenting this audience to make you feel good. Julian at dinner and restaurant doesn't open his mouth. The fact that he's talking this much has all to do with the questions you're asking. Any more questions?
Yes, Peter.
So there you are, a kid growing up in the Bronx. Do you recall what the first Broadway show was that you
Oh,
ever
I
saw?
sure do. It was Peter Pan with Mary Martin and Cyril Richard. And there's a moment in Peter Pan where Mary Martin asked the audience to save Tinkerbell. And I get up, and I'm with the other kids screaming, I believe, I believe. Now, I was 13. 13 now, I mean, I don't even want to say what's going on. But yes, Peter Pan, Mary Martin, absolutely killed me, knocked me out. I don't think I've ever enjoyed a show more. And I knew that I was hooked. I'm Captain Hook. I love actors, and actors know it. It's not like I'm putting on a show or I'm trying to be their buddy. I really love them because I admire what they do. And because of that, I think I've been fortunate enough to befriend them and to stay friends with them. So, yeah, I think it depends on the actor. I certainly have fired actors. I mean, it's not like I haven't, but it really has to be something. And I'm not saying who.
Now, for the next interview show that I have to do with Julian, I'd like you all to come because you're great question askers.
Hopefully, we're doing this play on Norman Mailer, written by his son, but it's all Norman Mailer's words. F. Murray Abraham is going to play Norman Mailer. Lila Robbins is going to play the kind of foe that interviews him. And yes, I hope to be doing that show sometime, but COVID kind of changed everything for my schedule, and that's really why I wrote these books, because I had to do something besides
Produce.
produce. Yes, sir.
Elaine, how come you don't do interviews?
How come you don't do interviews?
What an interesting question. They frighten me. I could never do what Julian is doing now, which is just making things up. I just can't. Could you do an interview? If I interviewed you, but if an interviewer interviewed you, would you be able to come up with the answers? And
I hope so.
oh well, then I don't know why I don't do it.
The wonderful writer Irwin Shaw, who wrote The Young Lions, among other things, came in totally inebriated. He was totally drunk, absolutely drunk, and slurring his words the way Eli Wallach was earlier in this talk. And I was going to have to tell him to leave the air, But he sat down in the chair, and something seemed to happen. When I came back from a commercial, I guess there's Irwin Shaw, and he spoke beautifully. It was great. We went to a commercial. He went, "What do you think, kid? Am I doing okay?" It was just wild. It was really like a Jekyll and Hyde. So I had that. I had some famous people come drunk that I did throw off the air.
I wasn't drunk.
No. And you wouldn't do the interview either. Yeah, we did a film together on Mike Nichols called Mike Nichols, an American Master. Elaine directed it, and I produced it and interviewed Mike. And I couldn't get Elaine for a beloved partner, for me, or for anything to do, even to do her own show. So she's consistent. She does not do it.
I was in that show.
Voice.
No, me, personally.
Oh yeah, the clips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
But not you. Not you now.
I was in the clip. Well,
I mean,
listen, I'm here today, and I want you to know that there are many other stories in his first book, and they couldn't be spoken about tonight because there's sex stories in there. But if you want to know,
you're doing
yeah.
great.
Now, if you don't buy books, I've failed. I mean, really, this is my last interview, and I'm trying, I'm hoping for sales.
No, this is not the group for sales.
You're kidding.
No.
Well, I'm going back to the menu.
I know you are.